A red room. Wait, no, it was a black and white room. A black and white room. A black and white room. Oh, Mary had a black and white room. This analogy is broken. Every time we hear analogies, they have to be put to scrutiny. Every time you hear an analogy, you should be skeptical. All right. If you listen to any amount of Aaron Ross talk with Matthew, you will have heard maybe the end part there where Matthew talks about Mary's room and that this argument proves that there is a non-physical thing. Qualia. Oh, the qualia. Oh, qualia. Qualia is an experience you have. And even though that's physical and everything about this scenario is physical, somehow this proves things aren't physical. Even though the person that made this argument all later was like, this argument sucks. So let's go over it, shall we? The knowledge argument, known as Mary's room, Mary the color scientist, or Mary the super scientist, is a philosophical thought experiment proposed by Frank Jackson in his article, "Whoa the hell, I'm not going to pronounce that word anytime soon," Qualia in 1982. And then it's extended to what Mary didn't know. So the thought experiment, describes Mary, who's a scientist who exists in a black and white world where she has extensive access to physical descriptions of color, but no actual perceptual experience of color. Mary's learned everything there is to learn about color. We'll come back to that in a moment, but has never experienced it for herself. And then the question of the thought experiment is whether Mary will gain new knowledge when she goes outside of the color world and experiences seeing in color. So Mary has a high tilting windmill. Yeah, so this is because of Aaron Ross hang out with Matthew, a philosopher guy. I think I talked to Matthew at some point. Couldn't find the video where I did, so I don't know. I think I recognize him, but I could be wrong. But anyways, Matthew seems to think that this thought experiment somehow points to the non-physical, that materialistic explanations alone aren't enough. Okay, so we're going to go and play the thought experiment. So Mary, we're told certain things about Mary, but there's other things that we have to assume about Mary. So let's assume them and make them clear. Mary can see color, but she has been born into a world that is black, white, and I assume shades of gray, because I'm not sure that you could really interact with a world that was pure black and white, because you would need depth perception, and you can only get that with shades of gray. So black, white, shades of black and white, but no color other than that. Okay, fine. But then this world he leaves, well, it's better if he's in a room that's black and white, because then we're introducing parallel worlds and things like. For whatever reason, she's been exposed. She's been part of an experiment where they raised her in this black and white room, an environment for I don't know whatever weird reason, doesn't matter, And then she leaves and she experiences the outside. Somewhat similar to, say, Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz movie. That it starts in black and white and it ends and then it goes to color. And then back to black and white again when she goes home, because Oz is magical and the real world is boring, I guess. Anyways, all right, so that's the scenario. Mary can experience it, but she hasn't yet. Now, here's one, if not more, of problems that are embedded in this thought experiment before we go on with it. And that is the statement about Mary, that she has learned everything that there is to learn about color, is not a true statement, because the experience of color is a learned thing as well. So the thought experiment has a fundamental flaw built in, because it says she's learned everything, but that's not really true. She hasn't learned everything. She's learned everything that you can learn intellectually, but not a experience. So you could also frame this like that you could learn everything there is to know about chocolate ice cream, except you've never eaten chocolate ice cream. So you haven't really learned everything about it, because the one element that you haven't yet learned is what it actually tastes like to you personally. Maybe you read accounts that other people made, maybe you've studied it in depth, but there is an element that you are missing, so you haven't really learned everything. And it's constructed so that you can't say she's learned everything when she hasn't learned everything. So that's a problem. Okay. The experiments intended to argue against physicalism, which is the view that the universe, including all of its mental, is entirely physical. Jackson says it's an irresistible conclusion that there are more properties than physicalists talk about. But then Jackson eventually did call himself a physicalist and said in 2023, I no longer accept the argument, but he still feels the argument should be addressed seriously if you're a physicalist. Okay. Well, I guess since I'm a localized materialist naturalist these days, I guess I have to address it seriously. It's a thought experiment, and it's not real, but sure. Okay. And then there was a debate between Daniel Dennett, David Lewis, Paul, whatever. Okay, so here's a thought experiment framed more in this way. So Mary's a brilliant scientist who, for whatever reason, is forced to investigate the world from a black and white room via black and white television. She specializes in neurophysiology of vision and acquires all the physical information there is to obtain, what goes on when we see ripe tomatoes, the sky, and uses terms like red, blue, and so on. When she's released from a black and white room or is given a color television, will she learn anything or not? So, yes, she will learn something new, because she will acquire a new information she does not yet have. And the way that she acquires that information is through physical processes. There's nothing going on here that is non-physical. Her eyeballs are observing the black and white room. She has used her eyeballs and her brain to acquire all the possible information that can be acquired by reading, which of course excludes what's called the qualia, or the experience of the thing. So, is she learning something new? Yeah, she learns this experience. Why is that not physical? Don't know. Anyways, it says in Wikipedia that there's a disagreement how to arrange these premises in the conclusion. Is it Mary knows everything that there is to know, but actually she doesn't know everything there is to know, because that's what I said. I said, actually, she doesn't know everything because she hasn't experienced it. So the sensation and properties aren't the same. And that's, yes, but the brain states and their properties. So experiencing the thing is different than learning about the thing. Right. Sure. Still physical, though. And then, of course, that was rejected. He says, okay, so Mary knows everything there is physical there is to know about other people. but she doesn't know everything there is to know about other people because she learned something about them. So there's truth about other people which escape the physicalist story. No, she she doesn't gain all the knowledge. So you're making this into a thing where Mary has all the knowledge, but she actually doesn't really have all the knowledge. Well, she has knowledge, but not experience. Okay, cool. So doing the thing is different than learning about the thing, but that's still physical. There's nothing non-physical going on here, but it's this switching cups and balls trick of we're going to use these words and make it seem like that this is non-physical. It's like, look, Mary starts out in the black and white room, then she goes outside and she sees color for the first time. It's probably pretty damn amazing, overwhelming, and if she knows all this information, she knows she can point to a tomato and say, yeah, that's what red is. Well, unless it's a green tomato, because she could be wrong about it, But if she knows enough, she could, somebody else could help her verify it. So let's see. So there are non-physical facts about color sensations. No, all the facts about color are physical, and so is her experience of color is caused by physical stuff. So there is no non-physical fact about this experience that she has, and that's where this argument fails, because learning a new fact about the sensation is still experienced through physical eyes, a physical brain. So there is no non-physical facts to learn. The experience is rooted in the physical world where she is. And color sensations are physical entities because they occur in the brain. So there you go. So now this isn't about God. This is supposed to say that physicalism is false because, well, if she did learn something new, then that thing is not physical because we're going to pretend like you're just going to pretend it's not, even though it is. It's no kidding. This argument doesn't work. So I and then the guy himself, the guy that made the argument's like, this is a bad argument. Why in the world would any philosopher ever point to the argument then? Well, maybe because they don't have much of anything else to point to. So, and I've talked about non-physical before, and what it is or isn't. And I think that this is where the theists go into La La Land sometimes. Not all, but Matthew did when talking to Ara and Ron. Who haven't seen that or listened to it, I listened to some of it because I got in towards the end. So you can whatever you want to do with that, interact how you want. But so you can't negate physicalism because we are physical beings. So physicalism is true. There's no way to negate it. What the person trying to negate it is trying to say, well, there's more than just the physical. Okay, negating the physical world, not possible because you're negating reality. But you would still need to make a positive case for your side, even if you somehow did that. Tilting he got to the punchline before I could. Yeah. If it's false, then the supernatural is real, so therefore God. Yeah. Right. This black and white thinking that if somehow I disprove evolution, then that proves creation, as if they are competing hypotheses. No. You're disproving anything doesn't prove your point. You still need to prove your point. You still need to make a positive case that non-physicalism is a thing
beyond a concept. It is a concept. That's all it is, though. So numbers, 0 through infinity, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we all know numbers. But numbers are weird because it could be anything. We could have decided whatever the shape we wanted. We could have named them differently, whatever. But once we have that thing, what is it we're talking about? So the number 1, what is 1? Well, it's not a thing you can pick up from a tree. It doesn't grow from trees or pick from the ground. It's not a fruit or a vegetable. It's not an animal. It's not alive. It's not an inanimate either because it's not like a rock. It's not. Well, what is it then? Well, it's an idea in the brain. It's a abstract object of the mind. But some philosopher at some point said, we'll just call it non-physical. And I'm like, well, that's going to ruin things later. But he's in the past, so he doesn't know what the hell I'm saying. So, but object of the mind, I think, is a better way to phrase it. Because the number 1 exists in your brain. And that's it. That's the only place it exists. It doesn't exist anywhere else. You say, well, but I wrote it down. Well, yeah, but that's just a symbol that we call number 1. It still only exists as an entity of the mind. So it's still not the sort of thing that other things are. So it is a different category to some degree, but it is entirely based on the physical world because it represents something. First of all, it represents a quantity of something, and secondly, no brain equals no number 1. That's it. You got nothing. So without the brain, the concept would vanish, as far as we can tell. Musical notes are similar, and perhaps we can hear a musical note. Ding. Okay, that's a E chord or whatever the bleep it is. And you can write down what that looks like on a music chart. And there's a mathematical thing in music, what note goes where on the little bars, and that means something to people that can read music, which is not me. I think I learned what a note looked like at one point in time because I was going to play the recorder, but then that class got screwed up because they tried to mix the intermediate students with the advanced students because they were already running out of funding, and now schools no longer teach music, so music is dead. Great job, public schools. Oh, well, who to blame for that? I don't know. Anyways, am I bitter? A little bit. I don't know. I guess I could learn the recorder, but, whatever. Then I could play Mary Had a Little Lamb, which is one of the first things we were going to learn to play, actually. But every note means something, but we decided what it meant and why. So music notes don't exist in the way that anything else does. They exist in this realm of ideas, in the realm of your brain, as abstract objects of the mind. So you can't eat a musical note. You could eat something that's in the shape of a musical note, but it isn't the musical note. It's just a thing in the shape of the musical note, because the musical note is only a thing that you invented or that we invented, and it isn't any other sort of thing. Okay, well, words as well. Letters, all the words, everything, that's all invented. Oh, God. Now what? Well, yeah. So we could call it non-physical, but it is physical because it's an idea, and ideas are physical because they're chemical, electrical things that are happening in our brain, and our brain stores these things, and so that's physical. Otherwise, if you have a flash drive and you put information on it, well, it doesn't weigh more because you've just moved around some electrons. Maybe at some scale it might weigh different. I don't think so. No, I don't think it weighs more. You feel it. It was empty before, but now it's full of information. Well, you've just moved around what was there, right? I'm not a computer expert, so I don't know. But it doesn't weigh more, right? So it's non-physical. You're holding a flash with that has the Constitution on it, and before it didn't. So you now have proof of the non-physical realm? No, everything about that is physical. In fact, you can erase what's on it. You can destroy what's on it because you arrange the molecules, the atoms differently, and there goes your stuff, right? Hi, IN Devonport. Even your private school dropped the music class. Yeah, it's just sucks. No, that's fine. No, absolutely, that's all right. It's fine. Steal the thunder. It's fine. It's okay. Chat doesn't show up in the final videos unless I feature it, so it all doesn't really count. Well, I think it does sometimes show up. Like it just YouTube does whatever the bleep it wants. Anyways, so then you have the supernatural. What the hell is that? Well, it's not physical. Okay, so it's an object of the mind. No, it's different. Okay. And then you use an analogy like Mary's room and go, see? And I go, nope, all that was physical. And that's what was going on with Aaron Ra and Matthew, is Matthew thinks that this is a good argument for the non-physical, even though it's not. And then he thinks the fine-tuning argument is a good argument for God, even though it's not. The problem is, and I wrote this as a comment, I said, what is God in the first place? But even deeper of a question of that is, what methodology did you use to come to that conclusion? And answering that will highlight the problem of the concept God, because I don't know that there is a methodology that actually is a methodology. Typically, it's just said that God is X, Y, and Z as fiat, as a brute, as if it's an axiom or brute fact. God is omni X, Y, and Z. That's nice. How do you know? Why does God have to be that thing? Why can't God be somewhat powerful, somewhat knowledgeable? Well, because we're talking about an all-powerful being. Why is God an all-powerful being? Because I said God was an all-powerful being. Okay. But what method did you use to determine that God's an all-powerful being? Well, I didn't use any method. I'm just saying God's an all-powerful being. Why? Because I just am. I'm just saying it. Okay, so there isn't a method. You're just saying that God is whatever and then proceeding from there. Yep, that's what they're doing. And that's what Matthew did, whether he knows it or not. The ideas of God, broadly speaking, come from theology. And depending on your theology, you're going to get different ideas of what God is or isn't. And the idea that God is omnipotent, omniscient, omniscient, all that comes from Judeo-Christian ideas to some extent. Some of it's taken from Judaism, and some of it's probably taken from Zoroastrianism, and it's been changed and refined over time to be what it is today. But other theisms, other ideas of God, don't posit all-knowing gods, but they might posit all-powerful gods or very powerful gods, but not all-powerful. And of course, you have Zeus and Hercules and all that. So you have demigods, and so there's a hierarchy. Zeus is kind of the leader of the gods, but Zeus can be tricked and taken out. Zeus doesn't know everything, and Zeus isn't all-powerful. He's just very powerful. So, they can shift positions, and they can play political games with each other, and they like messing around with humans because they're bored. You can do anything. Of course, you're going to be bored. There isn't anything to do. There's no challenge, right? So you're bored. So why can't God be Zeus? Well, because I don't want God to be Zeus. There you go. That's just it. That's it. That's it. That's the only, there is no methodology that I'm aware of that gets you to the conclusion that God is whatever the theist is claiming. So ask the theist, what is God? But even more importantly, what method did you use to arrive at the conclusion of what God is? And I did that with the last guy I interviewed, and he said, he was honest. He said, faith. Faith is how he knew. So he didn't know. He believed. So God appears to be an object of the mind. That's a reasonable conclusion. And unless we're ever shown more than that, there's no reason we should think it is more than that. It's still interesting. I mean, the number one is interesting, you know, but it's made up. It's useful. You can use it for stuff. It's dangerous if you use it in the wrong way or for the wrong application. And so, too, the idea of God is useful or dangerous depending on what you use it for. But there's no reason to pretend it's real any more than there is to pretend the number one is real. It's really useful, but it's an idea and nothing more. Anyways, yeah, humans created God. God didn't create humans. Yeah, well, if there was a thing God, the fine tuning going back to that because Matthew couldn't get out of that. The realm where God exists, where is that? Well, is it a universe? Or does God exist nowhere? God has to exist somewhere, but we're told God exists in a non-physical realm. Okay, is that realm perfect for God to exist in? In other words, is it tuned for God's existence? Oops. You see the problem. Because if it is tuned, then did God tune that realm? Or was it always that way? Could it be a different way? Can God change what God is? Or is God actually limited in that it isn't able to change itself? So it's not omnipowerful, it's logically potent. It can only do what is logically powerful or logically plausible or possible. Well, who knows? Because we're just in the realm of the abstract. God can do whatever you say it can, or can't do whatever you say it can't do, because God is as imaginary as Jar Jar Binks until you show otherwise. Matthew cannot demonstrate that God is X, which is what Aaron Ra is wanting. So give me the thing that shows me that God is this thing. In other words, God would be proof of God. Why would God make a universe like this one? We don't know. It did. Okay, cool. So fine-tuning, it made it with these things, and if those things were different, we wouldn't be here. Okay. Why did it do it like that? It didn't have to. It could have made the universe that it wasn't tuned for life, but still made life possible anyways, because it's God, right? It can do whatever the bleep it wants. So now you have to have a reason why God did it that way. So this is a hint that God exists, because God likes to give us little hints about it. Why not just be obvious? So God doesn't want us to know that it exists, obviously, because God isn't just showing us that God exists. Right. And also, so you can only make negative conclusions about God based on pure observation. So you observe that you don't see a God, or if you are seeing God, you can't tell what is or isn't God. Cool. You also observe that humans say different stuff about what God is, and nobody agrees with each other. Okay, cool. So if there is a thing God, it is staying out of the whole conversation. It's not participating. It's not telling us that we're right or wrong or anything at all. It's not interacting with us at any level that we can differentiate any better than any other religion does, which is to say, not at all. And there's no way to test God. Uh-oh, that's a problem. So then you're rendered into God being whatever the person claims, and here's an argument. Well, the only way you could have a sound argument is, well, first you need to know informal logic so that you can make it, but then guess what? Informal logic has a limit, and that limit is reality itself. I can tell you premise 1, either my light is on or off. Premise 2, lobsters exist. Premise 3, if lobsters exist, my light is off. Conclusion, my light is off. And you go, well, there's a problem with that argument. Lobsters have nothing to do with your light. Well, how do you know that? Well, because they don't. But how do you know? Because you looked at the real world and said lobsters don't have anything to do with the damn light being on or off. So we had to leave logic to the side to check in with reality to find out if there was a fallacy in our argument. The theist thinks that they do that in their arguments for God, but they don't. How does fine-tuning prove God? Because it's so improbable that life would be here, that means that it had to be God. But God could have done it anyway that it wanted. So why would that prove God? Well, because it shows that humans are what God wants. How does it show that and not some other life? How does it not show that bacteria is what God wants? There's more bacteria than there is anything else, right? So why wouldn't that be the conclusion? Because you already know what God is. God is the thing that you've decided based upon your theology. Oh, whoops. So, yeah. Comment on the video once it's a video. Yeah, well, nobody does that. Web expert. I don't know. Yeah, is it probable or possible that God exists? I don't know how you would even determine that. It's just like, is it possible that a cat will fly out of my rear end? No. Well, I don't know. If you're a statistician, you could probably make some sort of weird thing that would be like, it's 0.001% possible because of this. And I'd be like, what the hell? Well, like they're working on CERN one day, and they're joking around about Schrodinger's cat, and they put a cat in a box, and they're joking about it, and they think it's really funny, and they're shaking the box around, and the cat gets loose, jumps into the machine as the pulse goes, gets scattered into atoms or whatever, and it opens up a portal, and that portal quantum links with my butt, and so this pieces of cat come flying out my butt, and the likelihood of that is whatever the bleep that is, It probably wouldn't be the particle accelerator because I don't think that can make a portal, but whatever, so yeah, but no, there's, silliness, right? Because you had to believe that there was this machine, you had to believe this, you had to believe that, and none of these things are true. There's just ideas that you're throwing out there. It's like, well, if this idea existed, then we could do this thing, and da-da-da-da-da. So anyways, this is all a long-winded way of saying I created the only YouTube short that I'm ever going to create, and technically I didn't create it. AI created it for me. I just threw the prompt at it. And it's not on this channel. It's on my other channel that I don't really use that much, hardly. That's also called Deconverted Man. And if you know what that channel is, then you can find it. But if you don't know what it is, then you won't be able to find it. But if you look at a video I did that's live, that wasn't this video, but it was a different video, you might find the bonus link to that video that will then lead you to that other video. So if you really care enough to see what insanity my brain came up with and then AI made possible, then you'll do all that. And if you don't care, then you won't do it and you won't know. So that's a thing to think about, isn't it? And I'll leave you with that until next time. Be skeptical. And after next time, stay skeptical.